Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Source Snack Break. I'm Brittany McLean, the Director of Membership at Source, and I'm joined today with Tom from Pure and FreeForm. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For those of you who haven't snacked with us before, if you have questions throughout the presentation, you've been muted automatically, but you can still ask us questions or give feedback on what you're seeing. We'd love to know what you like as we're going through the presentation today. And you can use the chat box on the right hand of your screen to do that. Also, if you do need to step away for a few minutes or want to share this with a colleague, a copy of the presentation and the recording will be sent to you after today's presentation. So if you want, you can, I'll pass it on over and we'll just jump right in. Also, I'm sorry, I have some drilling going on next door. So I'm gonna make this quick and just turn it right over to you and we'll get started. So please feel free to ask questions along the way in the chat and I'll read those out as we go through it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, guys, as we get started, as mentioned, my name's Tom. I'm with Pure FreeForm. So Pure FreeForm is going to be a custom design and finish for a metal cladding system. Um, so what we focus on is going to be heavily design centric rather than system centric metal panels. There's a lot of different things that you can do and I guess focus with on our panels themselves. So we're going to start here and just kind of showing, we'll have a bunch of project pictures, so stay tuned for that. But basically, throughout the history and the materiality of metal, when people think of metal, they think of basically one or two colors, three different colors, blacks, blues, simple silvers like you see here. And they think of it as highly luminous and reflective. And we kind of change the game with our material here in terms of how our ink and printing process helps us achieve that. We'll dive very deeply into it. Due to time, I'm not going to go too in depth, but we will get a little bit into that as well. So as we move on to this, I like to show this just to be clear. Our scope here is going to be the soffits in this building itself. So the wood grain, you can see some nice variegated texture. Usually you think of metal as super luminous, glossy, reflective. You can see here it's very diffuse, and you can also tell that there's a bunch of different color ranges within the material itself. So then we move on. I want to start with, we'll focus mainly on interiors today. You'll see some exterior facade pictures, but we will focus mainly. This is a list of all the things we can do. Important enough. Basically, the limits are endless. It can be used as a wrap or a veneer. So that just kind of tells you, I guess, the options with the material itself. So this is where we get into our finishes and what makes us special. So our printing process is called offset gravure printing. What that means is we basically have a flat sheet with multiple different layers of ink. All the metal panels you're seeing, I should say most, the metal panels you're seeing on in the industry today is going to be a typical two-coat Kynar. What I mean by that is it's sprayed on to a coil of aluminum as it comes off of a coil, and there's generally 2 to 3 coats of paint. Really what that does is it's just very limited in terms of gloss or range of color. And by having ours can go up to 8 layers of ink, typical is 5 to 6. You get to play with the finishes so much more, and it just creates a more diverse and interactive experience as you go through the facades. And the big reason for this is because of the ink that's being used. So most of your Kynars or your two-coat Kynars are using PVDF, which is a standard coating resin. It's very durable. It's what we're all used to seeing. FEVE, basically, as you look at this sheet or this chart, if you will, one thing or you should just take away from it is the gloss range. The gloss range is better. Yes, it's slightly more durable, but really what it allows you to do is play with those color ranges too. So gloss and color range. So as we go through products or projects, I just kind of let them speak for themselves because it just shows you exactly the difference between what you may be used to seeing. Our standard sheet sizes, don't want to get super into this, but there is limitations. 48 by 120 is our biggest. We range from 0.6 to 3 mil. Most interior is going to be 0.6 or 0.8, so it can be used in a veneer application. The material for interior, it's huge to note. It can be perforated. It can be provided with acoustical backer, whatever you may need for that. It is the most highly specified or highly rated ARMA 2605. So pretty much in terms of durability, never question it. It's top industry standard, 100% customizable, 60-year life cycle, and a standard 20-year warranty, which is across the board. Sustainability, I don't want to talk too much, but we are 100% recyclable. It's a huge thing for us. We pay a lot more money because where a typical metal panel is ACM. There's multiple different layers of different materials, right? You have like a polyethylene coating, you have different films, all that. Ours is a single skin of aluminum and then organic coatings that are VOC and red list free, which makes the product 100% recyclable and HBD compliant. So systems and
Awesome.
applications. What we want to go through here is just basically what you've seen in metal panels. We can do it. Although we're a super highly contextual finish, kind of changing the game with how metal's seen, we can do all the systems that you used to be seeing or specifying or you've seen on buildings today, and we can completely customize them. Pure Freeform is turnkey. We design the finishes, we manufacture, the only thing we are not doing is installing. So we do have all the systems from grid to everything you may need. So it's just kind of one point, one person to really turn to. So ceiling systems, this will be huge for interior. We do have our linear systems, torsion springs, baffles. I'm sure you guys can all agree are becoming the new craze. So we've seen a lot of baffles. And as mentioned earlier, our product can be perforated and can be used for acoustical purposes as well. And there's actually some projects in here. I always like to bring signage up because it kind of goes unnoticed, but it's huge to continue the material from inside out. And I guess it's a great time to talk about interior transitions as well. And we can go through some of the projects for it, but our material can be used on the outside and on the inside. So where most of the time exterior facades and interior don't necessarily play nice, you can't match completely from one to the next. We can actually match completely all the way through, and we can take take a specific sample and match as well. So on this project, I like to point this out. It's a project that's earned us a lot of attention over the years. It's 108 chambers. The reason that it's earned us so much attention is because you can see and I'm showing this knowing that it's highly interior, but it does a good job showing how the light plays on the material itself. So on the left side here, you can see how in the daylight you get a lot more luminous, reflective, more gold. And then as you shift to the right out of the sun, you get more of a deeper bronze. And that's really going to be a huge changing factor with using our material. The light plays a huge role because of all the different layers of ink. And it also allows us to impart physical texture. I like showing this product because it's a Moxie Chelsea. It's a natural. Everybody wants natural material until they realize that natural material weathers and you can't control it. So the nice portion with us is because it's a contextual coating. What you see at this point is what you're going to get for the entirety of it. It's not going to change or have any surprises that you don't like. Basically, they wanted a natural weathered steel for this project, but they couldn't do it because they were worried about the rust dripping down the glass facade. There's 33 stories, as you can see on the right. This is a slab edge profile. They use the slab edge there. Portland Japanese garden. This just kind of explains how we change metal and how it can be seen differently. Obviously, this is meant to be a very peaceful serenity type thing. You have the natural greenery on the roof, and now you're thinking, why would you throw metal, something so industrial, into a space like this? And it just does a great job illustrating how that can really change. So very expensive system, but basically it was meant to mimic natural slate and were the scope on the roof, just to be clear. This one is 25 Kent. I like showing this project because basically it shows you can also LED backlight it, but there you can see the facade on the outside, the brick of it. It matches great with the brick as you walk through, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but over here you can see it. There's a different flower bloom pattern as you walk and interact with the space itself. Mount Si High School is another one. So this just shows that we can do more than just flat. You can corrugate it too, to not just look like physical texture, but to actually add physical texture. And you can see these are actually it's the same product, but on the right side, you can see those glints of gold. And on this side, you get more glints of silver. And it's all because of how the light's playing with it and how the pearlescent inks that we're using are basically interacting with light themselves. Monumental staircases, once again, becoming a huge thing. People are using stairs as a focal point and obviously lights as well. So they play very well with each other. But I like to point this out because, once again, you don't think of using metal in this way oftentimes, but it has a huge impact on the space, as you can see. This is actually going to be a custom wood grain material that we did. And once again, it's actually a part of the Chase Center. But what we did is we just changed the slight color of it per their request. And we have two different wood grains that are used within this building itself. This is an acoustical perforated ceiling system. So I promised I'd talk about it, and here it is. This is Hudson Yards. So with these finishes, the coolest part about this one and what earns it so much attention is there's natural granite on the walls themselves. Undeniably, it's beautiful. It looks great, but it's very cool. What we did is we actually added most wood grains outside of us are really high gloss because they are metal. We did it intentionally, and we did it to actually help and contrast that cool palette. So that was just a huge thing, but also that it could be acoustical. When you think about metal, when you think about cheap metal, some of your chain restaurants that are being used, you'll think of what is oil canning in metal. It's that mirage kind of wave. We don't get that with ours, and that's basically because of all the different multiple layers of ink that allow it to stretch, but also help deflect light in a different way, so it can be more subtle all the way across. So it's really playing with this. Squarespace is another great opportunity to show custom perforations. Obviously, they wanted this to look like a night sky. Does a great job, LED, backlit, torsion spring system. They had leftover material, and they actually used it to wrap the bar front. And you can use it to wrap reception desk. So that's just a millwork application, simple to wrap with. So it just goes to show that and it's also point to note is that yes, it can be radiused, but we have to be careful when we're radiusing metal just because we are still bending metal. So keep that in mind. Expensify. This project has just been absolutely great for us, and it does a great job of showing where you can mimic natural materials such as brass. Throughout this building, Expensify's story behind the project is the space was leased. They wanted to have their space stand out and match the rest of the building itself, but they didn't want to dump a ton of money into it. And brass is hard to work with, expensive, and just wasn't a great option. So we custom did this finish for them. It's called Hampton Brass, and they created the floating office space, but then wrapping it in the Hampton Brass. It's been one of those projects that just continues to give us positive attention. Smithsonian, so this is actually in the Smithsonian itself, and it's a museum for African American history. And basically, as you can imagine, as you walk through the whole display itself, it's not necessarily the most calming experience. So this is at the very end of the museum. And what they wanted to do is they needed they wanted that natural copper look, but you can't have a natural copper that's not going to oxidize and go out of control weathering wise when you have a water oculus coming from the ceiling. So that's where we stepped in. So we are the ceiling scope on this. And obviously you're still getting that emerald look. It's instilling a sense of calmness once again, even though it's metal, but it's also playing on the light dropping from the oculus and was able to withstand the extreme humidity. I like showing this because it just shows how durable the finishes are. I mean, it's literally in the center of a falling waterfall. This is collections. Now, as I go from left to right here, you'll see in the top left, you have a bunch of physical texture that comes across that finish. I know they're small, so hang with me there, but a bunch of physical texture, and you can see multiple different layers of ink in terms of the different colors that are happening. Same thing with the next finish as we move on. And then in the middle one, the one that stands out, that weird stripe one, that's a finish we called Emblem. You can see it's really diffuse in the gray area of it. And that's actually a picture of a corrugated panel, but it's really diffuse in the middle. And then you have the highly reflective brass. I like bringing this finish up because it just shows you how much you can play with the printing on metal, and really the limits are endless with it. Super Metal Fuchsia is another one of our collections here. You get into the darker colors, if you will, a little bit more matte. Now look into the right, you can see Hampton Brass, but if you look off to the right, you can see how that would not be possible with a standard two-coat Kiner. There's multiple different colors going on there. So that's when the material is really going to be a benefit. This is kind of a show-off slide is what I call it. We can do crazy stuff like this. Now, in the interior space, we're seeing a lot of health and wellness, people using something to once again instill a sense of calmness. But it just shows off how in depth we can. We do have wood grains. In a risk of sounding arrogant, if you put our wood grains in comparison or next to another wood grain, you will just noticeably be able to see the difference. I would love to send you samples to put my word to test. We do have full on accredited courses and everything as well. And I want to make sure you guys know that it's available. We do have samples that you can order. Um, and then I can see as light is an important aspect to showcasing the texture, do you often coordinate with lighting design, especially for interiors? That is an 100% great question. And yes, we do. So now I always bring this up on the CEU portion of it. Oftentimes you're like, oh, it changes in light so much. Well, I don't want to walk to the corner of the room and have it change. I want the look that I specified. And that's a great question. There's different base layers of ink that we can use, and that will control that. So it doesn't
Hmm.
change as much. Yes, light undeniably will change texture and gloss no matter what you do. But it's just important to note that you can control it as well. And then
Awesome.
I want to move on to this portion of it because we say custom, and custom really kind of scares people because they're like, oh, it's going to take forever. It's going to cost a bunch of money. We have finishes that have been designed by designers like yourself that you can use and rely on. So you can select a finish and move on, and then we have them and we can readily send you samples. We can redesign a finish. It can be, hey, you have a wood grain and you don't like the cathedraling in the wood and you want to take that cathedraling out. We can customize that sample for you. We want to match a finish. You guys are dead set on using a wood wrap for the front desk, but you want it on the ceiling, and we all know no pieces of wood match perfectly. We can take a chunk of that wood and match it directly, or you can go from the start and completely design it. In terms of specifying it, it's just the same as you would any other metal. The one thing I want to bring up is price because it's the burning question. And the burning question is how much it's going to cost. And we are very candid in speaking that we are about double the cost of a two coat Kynar. Now, in the interior space, when you're talking ceilings, we found ourselves very, very competitive. We do not lose a lot
Cool.
of ceilings, which is super nice. Now, on the exterior facades, there's a lot more. I guess people are just more apt to put a plain black or a plain blue or gold or white on the exterior, but on the interior, where it's going to be a high traffic point, and not hundreds of stories up or 30 stories, whatever it may be, they're more open to spending the money on the finishes. So please don't be concerned about it. We also have a stocking inventory program, which is important for us to note.
Awesome.
Because mill workers that you may be working with to adhere this material to a front desk or cabinets, or just using as the backer for a reception desk, they're going to want to know how long it takes. And we do have inventory accessible where you can get sheets within 2 weeks. And in today's world with lead time issues, I think that's very, very important. The three things that do affect cost is the material gauge. If you're interior, typically you don't have to worry about wind loads. So you can do a thinner material. That's good for price. Material volume, it generally goes down unless it's a ceiling. And panel complexity, it's very, some of the, unless you're talking baffles, generally not as complex. I like showing this picture just because it shows some of the different systems. You can do a corrugated ceiling system. We can make panels that are
Beautiful.
accessible so you can still get to lighting. And then once again, another ceiling system, a millwork application that just kind of shows us, hey, you can be really glossy on these shine concrete floors that they put in there, and you can put metal on the wall and it can become the diffusive feature of the room itself. You have light coming in from the corner over there in the hallway. It hits that metal. It's not reflective, and it actually pairs very well with the natural material. Wrapping the front desk, simple millwork application, frozen titanium. As you shift across this, you can see how it changes and interacts with light itself. So that was a very, very quick overview of contextual coatings. But the biggest thing to note is that we are finish centric. We are not system centric. So if you guys are looking to make a statement with your material or your space or a huge focal point, have something that people walk by and go, what's that? We're the place for you. If it's going to be something where you're just looking to cover space but make it not as decorative, then we're not the best fit. We know that we're not the best for every application. So we were open to any ideas. We do custom designs. I will not take the claim as being the creative director. We have a creative director who's been designing metals, if you can believe it, for over 15 years. So he's seen it
That's
all.
awesome.
And we have a custom proof library that may not be finishes shown on our website, but if you talk to him or me or anybody else on our team, we would be able to point you in the right direction. So make it a little less overwhelming for you.
Love it. This is so cool. Do you guys have any other questions? You can submit them now. I think we've got all the ones that have come in so far, but this is really cool and I appreciate you breezing through that. There's, again, we'll follow up with the recording as well as the contact information if you have more questions and you want to get into contact with the team about that. I'll give it a minute to see if there's any other questions. Have there been any trends lately that you've seen that have sort of emerged or sort of new creative ideas out there?
Yeah, what we're obviously the black and steels and the wood grains are have always been a staple. The hardest part was nobody knew that black and steels could look the way that they did, and we've kind of changed the game there. The other thing, like I said, was monumental staircases, baffles are becoming huge, but we're also seeing more greens pop into the market. So more of that patina green, if you will, is popping in. I think we're actually seeing that more on the interior, just standard paint colors as well. People are going back to the greens and not as much grays and
Yep.
whites, and getting away from the standard grays and whites has been a blessing for us. Do we
Awesome.
have typical details for exterior attachments? I see that. Yes, we do. If you go onto our website, our details are readily available on any system. Our website, our marketing gal, Emily, she's absolutely fantastic and she does a great job at putting it all, making it readily available. You can search our website and projects by systems themselves and application. So it's really nice. So if you have columns that you want to see, you can see how columns are wrapped. If you have ceilings you want to see, so all the details are there. If you have any that you're missing, just please reach out, let us know. Our website is super accessible for any information and samples. And we're not the type of company where if you send a request, you won't hear back for 10 days. We generally respond back within 24 hours, if not a couple hours. So
Awesome. And I see, Andrea, you asked about the sources at the source library. So yes, we have those both in our physical libraries and online. So if there's something, again, that you don't see that's stocked in one of the physical locations that we have, you can order it through us or reach out to the team and they can get those set up, especially if you need like a custom sample. So, but I know I've seen them at the library, and after this presentation, you'll actually be redirected. So if you want to check what we have in stock nearby you. Doesn't look like we have any other questions that have come in, and let's see, we're right about at time, but this is really great and very much appreciate you joining today and showing off your products. I think this is really exciting. So
yeah, the
with
last
that, oh,
I was
sorry, go
just going
ahead.
to say, I will leave you with one last note. The one thing that as you listen to the presentation, and the one thing I will say is the pictures do their best job. As we know, pictures never do justice. We spend a lot of money on the photography to make the pictures try and capture everything, but nothing does the product justice like just getting physical samples. We have loads of samples available between Source and us. We can definitely get you them. So do not hesitate. Do not feel greedy if you want to see a bunch of them. We'd rather have you see them than not. So please put in sample requests and we'll get you all the ones that we do have available. So.
I love it. That's perfect. Excellent. Well, thanks so much. And again, as a reminder, this will be sent out afterwards, the recording and the slides to you automatically. And we'll be back the same time next week for another Source Snack Break. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. And thanks to everybody who joined.
Yes, thank you
Awesome.
guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Bye.
Take care.